So welcome to Retech, and today we're going to cover the videos and the things we've done over the last 4 weeks or the last month. And it's been quite a productive month as far as videos are concerned, and it's also been a minor controversial month really on some of the videos that I've done, mainly centering around restoring these machines. And everyone has their own opinion, which is, why we do these things, and also what's planned and what I'm releasing now as well. So let's dig in and have a look. Okay, so this month really kicked off with restoring computers, and one of the main themes was to retrobrite or not, whether it was worth retrobriting, whether it was worth leaving the machines as they were, whether it was worth painting, and so on. Now, my preferred route is always kind of to use retrobrite sparingly, as in to not do wholesale retrobriting of entire machines in their cases, because my experience, and this is my experience, is that these machines are getting far too brittle, and retrobrite exacerbates that sort of brittleness within the plastics. And one of my videos I had to put up is about a Apple computer that I literally just picked the thing up and it started to collapse, and it was literally turning to dust while I was carrying it, which wasn't good, because this was a fully working, really nice machine. Otherwise, it was a machine that I've had for a little while. Don't use it that often. It's been in storage, but it did show minor cracks when I actually first got the machine, but they weren't bad. You could carry the machine, lift it around, and it wasn't making things any worse. But now the machine just literally fell apart, and if you even pressed with your thumb on the plastic casing, it just fell apart, disintegrated, and that's the end of that machine. It doesn't matter how good the machine is, it doesn't matter how reliable the machine is. Once the casing has disintegrated, there's no longer really a machine there. You've just got the electronics, you haven't got the physical form of the machine, so that machine really, its essence is kind of lost. Now, what I did say on these videos is that basically I prefer to colour match where possible. And the reason I prefer to colour match is because the papers that I've actually read on why plastics, respond to retrobriting, and what it actually does to them, and why they become brittle, and why it's messing with the chemical composition of the original plastics, and it's something we shouldn't really be doing if we want to preserve these long term. At least that's the papers I read and what I read into it. Now, there's a lot of different theories out there, and which is fine, but at the moment it seems like retrobrite was in a favour for a while. It was in favour. It was, widely predicted as the saviour of these yellowing machines, but now even people who retrobrited things years ago, and one in particular, the 8-bit guy, did mention that his machines are starting to yellow even after a short time, and he needs to find another way of doing it, which is basically what he said on one of his videos. And that's because retrobrite really isn't the answer. Now, it's not the devil's answer, it's not something that we shouldn't be using, but things like keyboards, keycaps, things that are predominantly made of a slightly different material, different plastic and so on, should be retrobrited if you can, just to bring them back to colour. If you really want it to match the machine the way it came, or roughly the way it came out of the factory, that's fine, because repainting the keycaps and trying to put all the legends back on is just going to be a no-no. Okay, so it has maybe a place in bringing the thicker plastics of the keycaps back, but predominantly colour matching is probably going to, in my view anyway, is going to seal out all of the nasties from the environment, UV light and so on. It stops the leaching of the chemicals in the plastics coming through to spoil the finish as well, because it's under a layer of paint which is sealing it anyway. So that's my theory, and so far machines that I've done 3 years ago have been perfect. They haven't got any brittle, they haven't changed, they haven't changed in color, they haven't faded. So that's my preferred route, just because of experience. Okay, other people again might have a different experience. So yeah, it caused a few kind of not so much arguments but debates, which is fine, which is what I really like. So it's great, and that's what this is all about. So really, I did more videos on this last month than I have in the last 3 years, and I wasn't intending on doing it. The video where the machine was falling apart under just finger pressure, that was just because that's how it happened. So I thought I'd better put it out there to give people, you know, who own these machines a little bit of a heads up, you know, to try and see if they can preserve them before they get into that state. The second one on here, which was just basically think twice about wholesale retrobrite on these machines. You know, think about what you need to be doing to them to actually preserve them, and whether just leaving them well alone is going to be better in the long term, or medium term anyway, or until we find a really good solution. And then the last one was trying to kind of figure out a way of sealing it out, which was sealing it through painting, or even as the 8-bit guy mentioned, maybe a clear coat. But clear coat's not going to stop it leaching through from underneath the clear coat and affecting the colour. So it may preserve the actual hardware or the plastics, but you have to be very careful because clear is very aggressive, especially if you're using 2-pack clear. It's an automotive aggressive paint, and it's going to leave a plastic kind of finish on the surface, but it's going to be a nightmare to remove. You can use single pack clear, which is less aggressive, and you can also get water-based clear, which might be the way forward, but it kind of changes the colours slightly because it's got a tint to it. You know, you don't see it over such large areas, but you would probably notice it on something as small as a plastic case. But these are things I'm going to try out in the future and see which is going to be the best way forward. I've got a few old broken cases which I don't mind sacrificing, so I might do that a little bit in the future. One of my other videos concerned MIDI. MIDI's great. I mean, I really like the original MIDI, you know, the musical digital interface basically, and it was great for literally having it as a controller for your keyboard, where your keyboard does all the hard work. It does all the heavy lifting, so to speak. It produces the voices, the sounds, the rhythms, the tempos, and so on. Whereas the actual computer itself, being acting as a controller for these, all it's doing is sending play this, play this, play this, play this, in this order, this sequence, and so on. And the keyboard obeys it and just does it, which is fantastic. And I really like that, and I like this kind of older school methodology to creating music with instruments, because these MIDI devices, as in proper MIDI synthesizers, are instruments. They're not just a key switch, which is what we have now, MIDI controller keyboards, which literally don't do anything but other than act as a key switch. And I quite like the kind of old school MIDI. I also like the modern stuff, which I did a little bit of a video about, and you know, some of the stuff that I use, and ironically some of the yellowing that's going on MIDI keyboards and MIDI controllers that aren't that old. Now, I am almost certain it's a quality issue within the plastics as well as the fire retardant. I actually think these machines don't have the same chemicals in it. These keyboards don't have the same chemicals rather than the computers from the 80s and early 90s. So why they're going yellow is probably got to be down to the quality of the plastics. Now, I have Yamaha keyboards with original ivory coloured keyboards, and they're perfect. And I have Yamaha keyboards with brilliant white keyboards, and they're perfect. I also have a Korg controller, which is perfect. It's as white as you can get. And yet some of the other machines using what I might call lower grade plastics are starting to turn yellow. It doesn't bother me, it's just a colour. but I do like them being white, so I might have to do something with them later on. Don't know. Maybe just use them. I don't know. I might just use them as they are. I'm still undecided because they still work perfectly and it's not causing any problems. So again, that's the same thing with these computers. If they're not causing problems, why mess with them? There's another school of thought. So the MIDI side of it, I showed some modern stuff, some modern controllers on a modern PC and modern keyboards. And then 2 or 3 generations ago, Apple machines using GarageBand, which is quite a good little MIDI system, DAW, digital audio workshop, and I actually enjoy using that. And one of the biggest reasons I enjoy using that is because it's out of the box, it works. There's no messing with it. There's no mucking around with having to get extra 24-bit sound cards and all this kind of stuff to make it work, as you do on a lot of PCs. It works with an old or older school Macintosh. I quite like that. And to be honest, I don't do anything different on the GarageBand setup than I would on my modern ProSonus system. So really, is there a need to upgrade all the time? There isn't. There really isn't. And that's what this channel is about, reusing technology. If you don't need to upgrade for the sake of it and put working, functioning kit that you can use in a landfill because of the sake of a newer version, then don't do it. Because sometimes you're not really getting any advantage by doing that. And then in that video I moved on to some of the older kit. We're using an Atari St as my controller, which is great. I love that machine as it is, and it's been a bit of a workhorse, and most of my music has been produced via an Atari St or a Commodore Amiga using a MIDI system. Predominantly the Atari. It seems to have been, if that machine was produced just for MIDI only, nothing else, not a desktop, not a gaming machine, not an all-round machine, not a desktop publisher, not a competitor to the Apple Mac or the Amiga, just on its own with a brilliant MIDI system, full suite, already pre-installed, ready to go, that would have dominated the entire MIDI market. There's hardly a doubt in anybody's mind that the ST would have been the go-to MIDI system if it just went down that route rather than being a general machine, a generalized computer. And they're still being used today. I use them. A lot of professional musicians still use them. Because why relearn something when all you want to do is layer tracks? There's no real need for anything else really if you've got a old school or a synthesizer which produces the sounds anyway. Then I was lucky enough to get some donations. Donations are great. Don't get many, obviously. Not a huge channel as such. I do put out a lot of videos, but it's kind of building everything up slowly. And it's still a fairly young channel, but we do cover a lot of topics on here. We don't deviate much from what I set out to do with this channel originally, which is to basically show you can reuse this stuff. You can have fun with it. There is some history behind it. There is history behind everything that you use, right back to the early days of computing, which I've done quite a few history videos on. And it was nice to get these donations. I literally went down to pick up something else. It was another eBay find, and this other machine that I picked up, I was offered all of this kit, which you see on the video. Now, I don't have a massive use for a lot of it, but I will have, because I'm sure as things age and as I find more and more things you buy now, or if you're into this retro collecting and retro rebuilding, the vast majority of it now needs to be repaired. And so all of this will come in handy. And I'm sure other people that I know, or other people may say, I have got this machine and I saw on your video that you have X, Y and Z. Do you still have it? I have no problems shipping it to a good cause, because that's what it's all about. And it was great to get this stuff donated. And it was also by a very, very nice guy. So I was quite pleased with, speaking to this person and also, seeing the other side of it and seeing what his views were. And a lot of his views on restorations are very similar to mine. So it seems like I'm not alone in thinking that retro brights and all this kind of thing needs to be done with a little bit of caution, including painting as well. Now, I moved on to a Mac. I don't do a lot of Apple Macintoshes on here. I do have a few. I quite like them. I like the original kind of quirky, almost portable form factor of the original Macs with the screen the size of an adult's hand. And I do like them. But they do fall apart now. They're getting old and they do fail. The internals fail, the PCBs fail, the caps blow, they leak, and they destroy the boards before you've even known it's happened in some cases. And they're very difficult to repair, especially the surface mount variety as well. So any working system that has minor faults is great. It's a great addition that I can fix in my own time. And the Mac SE kind of changed my mind a little bit, because it was always, all the Macintoshes were always kind of being put up against the Atari St, and the Jackintosh was always kind of proclaimed to be a better machine. And I don't dispute really that it was technically a better machine for some things. As far as the screen was concerned, though, the Macintosh got it just about spot on. And not having a lot to do with the screens on there, because all of mine work. All of the screens on mine actually work. I've never had any reason to take them apart. I did see that there was a difference in quality, even though I believe that most of the Macintosh screens on these models were better than the Atari St monochrome screen for clarity, not size, and maybe not for saving your eyesight through eye strain, but just general clarity. And I didn't realize that at the time that there were 3 different manufacturers of screens, and that kind of accounted for what I've seen. I've seen them in kind of an anomaly where some screens reflect less than others, and I put it down to a mask. It's a mask within the structure of the machine themselves. But it's not. It's more down to the actual manufacturers of these machines. So there are 3 different manufacturers throughout the life of these classic Macintoshes, basically. So yeah, we're going to have to be careful of that, because you really expect Apple to have kept their quality all the way through the line, but it seemed to have varied a little bit as well. So they weren't really any different to any other manufacturer, to be honest. And that's something that's kind of revealing itself as these machines age. But all in all, though, the Macintosh SE kind of changed my mind a little bit on the Mac. I was never a huge Mac fan, which I've stated. I openly say that. Can't be a fan of everything, but I'm kind of warming to them, and I'm warming to the concept. Whether or not I will warm to the execution or not, but I warm to the concept. So yeah, it kind of changed my mind a little bit, which is great. Now, one of my later videos has been the Atari St. They seem to feature quite a lot. They don't feature so much in other channels. The Atari St tends to be the forgotten machine, where it was a very popular machine, and people seem to have forgotten that when they compare it against the Amiga. They sold comparatively the same amount of units for the time frame that they were out, where the ST was ahead at one point and the Amiga was trailing. And the ST seems to have been kind of the forgotten PC of the era, and I'm not so sure it deserves that, and which is why I kind of save quite a few STs as I find them. I save more STs than I do Amigas, and in general the STs cause less problems than the Amigas, as in restoration wise, which is quite strange. Maybe down to the more off-the-shelf chip count that they have on them than the Amiga's custom chipsets and so on, but that I've kind of yet to put my finger on and kind of say wholeheartedly it's this or this, which is why the Atari ST seemed to survive a lot better. they do have their downfalls, such as their casings. Their casings are brittle, they don't retrobrite very well, they go stripy, they go more brittle, etc. So yeah, that's the downfall. The electronics seem to be very good. The casings seem to be the bit that lets them down. So when I was looking through my parts bin, I found I had enough parts to create a Frankenstein Atari ST. Well, to me it is, because I know it's not original, but to somebody else, they probably wouldn't know any different, because it's original parts for that era that's been used in the case. So I was managed to kind of rescue another working Atari ST from that era, which is great. It adds to my collection, but this one I'm going to use as a general machine. It's just going to have a Gotek in it and so on, but I was quite happy with how easy that one came together. Now, it just shows that even if you don't collect entire machines, or you see something and you think, I could use that maybe for my machine if it ever breaks down, or if you find a part on eBay and so on, well, it might be worthwhile just picking them up from time to time, because in that way you will get a working machine out of what was generally or essentially a parts bin special. Because if you buy a working part, you know it's working. If you test it before you put it away, you know it's working. And then you can just accumulate the parts and build up a machine that's working out of all the good bits. And then hopefully that working machine is going to last a little bit longer, because it was built out of good parts to start off with, and you've inspected them as you've put them together. So you'll have noticed any minor leakages or batteries that are starting to bulge and so on before you actually power it on and make it into a machine. So yeah, it's always worth building parts bin machines. And you know, parts bin machines are a good way forward for somebody who maybe hasn't got the funds to go out and buy their dream retro machine. I'll guarantee you there's more parts for these dream retro machines out there than there is complete dream retro machines, because when they go wrong they get stripped for parts and the good bits go up for sale. So it might be an interesting way and an economical way and a reliable way of getting that machine that you really wanted. You see, things like the Amiga 1200, they are so relatively expensive now in the microcomputer scene or the retro scene. And I understand that they didn't build as many as the 500s, but they're kind of on par really with sales-wise to the 600. They're not that far apart. The 600 was a bit of a flop, so the 600 didn't sell that well. The 1200 had a short lifespan before the SCOM buyout, then it had a short lifespan after the SCOM buyout. So it's a bit of supply and demand, but there are still a lot of broken 1200s out there, which, you know, if you buy one broken and you accumulate the parts for it, you will probably end up with a better machine long term than something that you've just bought that you don't know what's in it, if it's reliable, if it's got any leakage, etc. and so on. So it's worth just considering buying things for parts and building a parts bin special. That's if you're not in that much of a hurry. Okay, maybe you are, maybe you want one tomorrow, you know, maybe you don't. Everyone's different, and that's what this game and this whole collecting and conserving of these retro machines is all about. So you may have noticed as well that I've put out a few very short videos. Now, the reason behind that is because I was chatting to a few people and they would like to get into the retro side of it, but they just think that some of the videos that are out there from really established YouTubers and new ones, etc., go into far too much detail about certain aspects of these machines. Now, if you're looking for something, let's say like a ZX Spectrum, maybe a Plus model or a 128 model, and all you want to know is, are they reliable? What components did they use? Is there any software available? Can you get the parts? Are their keyboards any good? And, you know, basically, that's it. You know, they want a brief overview of the machine to help them decide which path they want to go down, which machine they want to buy. For example, if they want to go and buy a QL, they just want to know how many they sell, was it a success, are there any issues, can you get software for them, do the microdrives work and are they worthwhile using, you know, were there any machines that you need to look out for, such as the early ones with the half their OS hanging out the back, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And should be very quick video. It should be a very informative, brief video, so they can, you know, people can retain enough information just to make a decision. And that's what this is all about. If you want to look in depth after that, then that's brilliant, which is why these short videos are there, of roughly 3 minutes or less, just to give people an idea about the machines that are out there. Now, I've started with the Sinclair models because it just seemed the natural thing to do, mainly because I'm in Sinclair land anyway, almost in the centre of it in Cambridge, and it just seemed, you know, like a good starting point. So I've done a few videos on the Sinclair machines. They should be coming out kind of one after another, really. I just want to put them out there and let people decide whether they want to watch them or not. And then I'll follow them up with maybe Atari and Acorn and Amstrad and so on, and maybe cover a few PCs as well, because the early PCs are getting old anyway, and the early PCs are retro, and if not becoming retro. So, you know, let's kind of get the retro community widened a little bit, not just with the 8-bit machines, but with the 16-bit and the 32-bit machines. I mean, how long is it before some of the early 64-bit machines are going to be regarded as retro? You know, you're almost kind of getting onto the 20-year-old mark for some of them. 20 years. So anyway, this is my review of the last month. I hope you liked it. I hope you join us for more, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Please subscribe.